Welcome to another episode of the Life in Motion podcast.
Our topic for this episode, movement and multimedia expertise. How PTs can employ video, music, text, animation, and other media in expressing ideas for better communication with patients and the PT profession. Our guest in this episode is Adrian Miranda. Born and raised from the Washington Heights area of Manhattan, he graduated from the Ithaca College of Physical Therapy, class of 2007. He currently practices at Windsor Physical Therapy in Brooklyn, New York, and is a board-certified orthopedic specialist. He has a strong interest and background in multimedia, currently the head of content of a virtual reality rehab startup called Reactive. He was also previously a video producer and media instructor and TV host for Brick TV and Media, a local television station in Brooklyn. His most recent project is the development of Gross Anatomy, a half-hour sketch comedy TV series about anatomy with Open Gate Entertainment, currently in distribution to studios. Dr. Adrian Miranda, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I love what you've done here. I love how you've married two things you're interested in. So how did you get interested in these two things that stand out? Crafting and starring in creative films, as well as becoming a physical therapist.
So the multimedia film thing was always there. The PT thing came by accident, sort of.
Oh.
So I had like a tale of like I knew I wanted this, and I also came by accident. So the PT thing, because that's a quick story. I took a test in high school. I thought I wanted to be a weatherman, so that's kind of where the TV. Sorry, I want to be a
That
weatherman.
makes sense. And,
Utica College, yeah, exactly. So Utica College, I got like early acceptance for atmospheric science. So for some reason, that just turned me off. I just didn't want to do. I just wanted to tell the weather on TV. And then I took one of those aptitude tests in high school. What profession should you be? And it said physical therapist. One top three. Like one was like athletic trainer. I didn't like my athletic trainer at the school. Orthopedic surgeon, which I was like, I'm not going to med school forever. And then physical therapy, I was like, oh, maybe that sounds like, I didn't know what it was. Now, the story is that my mom had hip replacement when I was like 10 years old. And I remember vividly, my mom came home right after her surgery. I don't know, mid 90s, late 90s, early 90s maybe. And yeah, early 90s. And my dad was like, it's too expensive. We can't go back to physical therapy. Yeah, so my parents couldn't afford the co-payments. And so like we just took turns sleeping in my mom's room, helping her go to the bathroom. And so that was, physical therapy was so distant to me. It wasn't even like a thing. Like here, to me as a child, it was like, you never heard of it because it was too expensive. It was inaccessible.
Wow.
So I didn't even know what physical therapy was. It sounded cool. For some reason on that computer screen, physical therapy was like, oh, maybe I could work with professional athletes. It just sounded that way, right? So that was the physical therapy story. And lo and behold, here I am. And the video, film, TV thing, that was as a kid. So I wasn't allowed out to play because I grew up in a pretty dangerous neighborhood. So my dad thought he'd keep me safe and keep me out of gangs and all the bad stuff. So I was home a lot. And for some reason as a kid, I used to watch the novelas with my parents and the news. My brother was 4 years older than me. He'd always be like, oh, the news is so depressing. He'd walk away. And I'd just sit there with my parents, right between them watching the crazy sensationalized news in Spanish and watching the Spanish soap operas. But what I knew...
And Mundial?
Univision and
Univision
Telemundo,
and Mundial.
yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So then even quickly as a kid, it didn't take more than like I was 7 years old. I was like, this is powerful stuff. Like I noticed that if on the news they said to rub broccoli on your forehead, that everybody would go and buy broccoli the next day. It was just like instantly in my neighborhood. Now it could have been the education, the socioeconomic barriers. It could have just been the way that the media had so much power. But I just saw that in my neighborhood happen just immediately. So I said, that's powerful. So when I got to PT school, fast forward, after like my first, because I went to a 5-year program. So, you start as an undergrad, freshman year, you kind of start in the program already. Quickly, as soon as I kind of started I had trouble in school. I wasn't the best student.
Aren't we all?
I was not the best student. Almost kicked out several times. The grades weren't that good for several reasons. But I knew, I think right before my fourth year, right before my last year, I was like, why don't more people know about this? I want to be the first well, for me at the time was there's an APTA Minority Scholarship Award and my essay, which I should have archived or kept, or I should probably email them. Like, can I have that back? One of the first Hispanic or minorities in media educating people about chronic pain.
Mm.
And so that made me want to be like Sanjay Gupta. But
Mm.
then, I realized, so I realized that in PT school, like towards the end, I was like, more people should know about this. How can I do this? Oh, television, and it came from my childhood being like, oh, I was watching these novellas, which are amazing. My dad was yelling at the TV. I was into it. My mom was like into it. It was like the
Yeah.
big talk everywhere you went. And then the news, right? Everything was the news. You waited for the news. So I knew that I wanted to merge those two things. Then somewhere in the like after 5 years of practicing, I kind of felt a little more confidence. I was just feeling confident. I wasn't there yet, but I was like, I think I'm ready to start the film part. So I just found this really, adult learning place, nonprofit called Brick, that was doing some incredible stuff. I took courses from them, and then I just studied on my own, did free things, and just practice. Tons of YouTube University.
Right,
In other
right.
words, watching a ton of YouTube all night long and
Mm-hmm.
practicing and just learning and asking people who are in the industry. So then, lo and behold, it kind of. But like in the middle there, I started reading books. Like I'd never read books before that, right? No, I started reading books about like leadership and business and how successful people can be successful. I came across a book that 50 Cent at the time, the rapper 50 Cent, the great poet 50 Cent, said that he read the book Mastery by Robert Greene, and I picked it up to read it. For instance, anyway, so for some reason I was like, let me read this book about mastery, and the book really talks about the really successful people. It's not always nature. It's nature and nurture. Our leaders born with it, and not always. And so he kind of talks about how a lot of the people that who are very, 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 very successful took two different things and they put it together, and then they kind of they apprenticed with somebody who had this idea and they were great at it, and then they kind of when they came in they saw it, and then they had their own ideas and they kind of melded it and they broke away from that idea and moved forward. But overall it was that they had two different backgrounds or one big background and they added another aspect to it, and they were able to be very successful in their fields. These are people like, he talks about Leonardo da Vinci, Ben Franklin's one of them. Steve Jobs was into calligraphy and computers, and that's kind of how it started. So that book kind of really influenced me, and that kind of gave me like the propulsion to be like, no, I've got to do this. And that's exactly what I want to do, and other people have done it, so I can do it too. So that whole mentality of someone before me did this, and it just really kind of motivated me, and I realized that wasn't crazy. Don't get me wrong, I've met people thought I was crazy or confused. I work as a clinician, but I also kind of get other jobs in film and marketing and stuff like that. And so people are like, "Oh, you have a lot of different interests." I'm like, no, it's not in different interests. It's just that I chose media as a platform to teach what I know in physical therapy.
Right.
The clinic is great, but think about how many people you can treat in the clinic. Then teaching in academia is great, but how many people can you treat? Teach in the classroom, but then they go out into the clinic and get mentored by different people. And so I figured that the media is just a powerful tool. It's a powerful platform. But so that's what happened. It was like as a kid, I watched television in a really rough neighborhood where there weren't that many opportunities, and so I got influenced by that. And then I randomly got put into physical therapy, struggled with that, but it made me through. And then I kind of molded the two together. And then when I wanted to be like Sanjay Gupta, I got on a break as a guest. I saw my ACL injuries, and I was all dressed up in a sweater and a tie. And I sat there, lights go on, and they start rolling the cameras, just like you see in like the Today Show, right? Or Good
Right.
Morning America. And then within 30 seconds, I was like, this is too stale. I don't want to do this. And then that's where kind of like the goofy part of me said, yeah, this is not you. Like, you're not going to be a journalistic contributor correspondent in
Right.
that form.
Not for you. All right. I love what you're saying there because basically you didn't invent peanut butter, you didn't invent jam, but you're figured out if you put those two things together, this is a very new product. You using media as a way to convey the ideas and how people can be helped by physical therapy. I think that's amazing, right? You got this inkling at 7 years old?
Well, I got the inkling that TV was powerful at like 7 or 8 years
Hmm.
old. But then I got the inkling that physical therapy plus TV was powerful. Yeah, I was like 20, maybe 20 years old.
Right. Because TV, especially now, because TV was the old form where people sat down at 7 p.m. to turn on the show, you get prime
Hmm.
time. But
Yeah.
that's a very gated channel, meaning there's only so many avenues for you to get on that screen. But
Hmm.
today, in today's multimedia, where
Yep.
anybody with a cell
Hmm.
phone can create content,
Exactly.
you
Hmm.
absolutely democratize, is that the word? You actually open it up to
Yeah.
anybody,
Yeah.
to all the creators.
Socialized. Socialized. Sorry.
Socialize.
The forbidden word. Yeah.
I know I was gonna say,
Socialized.
like, okay, all right, that's fine, it's allowed. So
Yeah.
your story is wonderful and it's amazing, and it just so many touch points there. I could barely keep track. Like how, you know, you don't sound like you're like a terribly bad kid, but you still had some troubles with college. And that's what they say sometimes about us trying to attract minorities and keeping our minorities in school is sometimes they go through certain troubling
Mhm.
situations where it's an easier way to get off the track. But I'm glad you sustained it. And I'm wondering now, did Ithaca do something very different? Was there a particular mentor who sort of shepherded you along? Was it one or the other, a little both?
um, it was weird. Okay, so like actually, what happened was my freshman year, my advisor. Okay, let me preface this with that he was actually the one who recommended me for the minority scholarship 4 years later,
Um,
and became a good friend, and actually took me under his wing. But it wasn't always. It was like a tumultuous relationship at first. But it was a quick thing in the beginning. So my freshman year, I was not doing well. I was not
mhm,
doing very well at all. I don't know what it was, to be honest. I think I went to boarding school and prep school. Like there was no reason. I
mm,
think I just didn't really understand. I don't know. Like college was different. When I guess my high school was predominantly like very international and very kind
mm.
of diverse, and then college was not at all.
Ah,
So not that that was anything, but it was just a different. It was definitely a different environment. And so I had a very low GPA, not super low, but it was low. It was like 2.5 or something. You had to have
mm,
2.7 by like the time you
mhm.
go into sophomore year. And my advisor, I'm meeting with my advisor, and he looks at it, and he's like, he looks giving me that look that every minority gets, like, oh, you're another statistic. And he's like, you're not gonna make it. And he kind of gives me back my transcripts or my stuff. He's like, yeah, you're not gonna
Ah,
make it. And he shakes his hand. He kind of like just brushes me off. And at that point, it was like for some reason, I should have been like, I'm gonna quit this program. Like I'm gonna get up. But that like lit a fire under me that was like, oh, that's what you think. I'm gonna come back. So then I not only I got to that 2.7, like 2.7 GPA. Then I kind of kept raising it, but in the middle of it, I had financial issues. In other words, like when I
right.
went in, I had like, for example, I only had to pay $2,000 tuition, and then my sister actually helped me out. My older sister helped me pay for that,
Mm,
which I didn't know how to pay for college either. That was another thing. Like I was on my own. My dad told us, "I'll get you through high school, and then after you guys are on your own."
mm,
So then my tuition went up to like 4,500 the second year, my sophomore year. So I was like, how am I going to get this money? So I was literally like half the time finding loans and how to find a loan, how to find a loan, getting a loan, doing that. Finally, like, I got the loan. Then it was like the next year it went up by like another $3,000. So I was like, is this normal? At the register, like, yeah, this is normal. I was like, what are you talking about? So at that point, I had friends, and I enjoyed it, and I kind of got used to it. But it was like always a struggle of like financially, like, wow, like every year I have to have $3,000 I don't have. My mom doesn't have. My dad had passed away when I was 12,
mm,
so my mom was by herself. And so yeah, that freshman year it was like I should have been like, all right, I'm gonna duck out of this program. It's too hard. I don't want to. This guy doesn't
mm.
believe I can make it. So
Right,
he kind of just shut the door on me. It was like that. Look, every minority knows that. Every person knows
right.
that. Whether minority or not, you just know when you're giving up on.
Mm,
And so it just lit a fire. And then, fast forward 3 or 4 years later, struggling with the finances. And, my grades were tough, but I was still kind of improving my 2.5 GPA. So you have a 3.5, 3.0 senior year. Finally have them in class senior year. And I made it a point, and this is when my grades weren't bad. It was just like the averages. I had to get A's and everything. So I was doing good actually every semester. But at that point, I had them in class, and I was like, I am not going to get less than an A in this class. It was neuroanatomy. It was neuroanatomy. And
Mm-hmm.
I was the only one. Actually, one test, like the average was like super low, and they were like the professors were like mad, like how did you guys do this? And I actually like studied my butt off for a week. It was Halloween weekend. I went out, partied, came back. I got like 97, like the highest, one of the second highest grade in the class, and everybody else was like it was like 99, 97, and everybody else was like an 80, like the high 80s. It was like
Adrian curve breaker.
yeah, curve breaker, literally. It was like the first time ever. But it was like, but that class, I never got under like a 95. Like, and it was because he was like a like a target. It was like, and at that point he started liking me because I had him in like a business course. Like, so he started like kind of warming up to me, and he really liked me. And then he said, hey, you should apply for the scholarship, minority scholarship. And so if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't be doing all this diversity initiative stuff. Yeah, that first thing kind of lit me over. But so I actually just there was really there was professors who kind of had my back. Like they saw me trying. They were definitely who had my back. But there was no, right now, actually, we have a student who just graduated FOSA, graduate of Ithaca College, who started a PT Students of Color a club, and they got funding by the provost. And even Sharon Dunn was on that, graduation call, in May, I guess it was. So, we're a couple of us from alumni were like, I wish we had that when we were students. We were, pretty alone. But, there was, some faculty that just like you, that are nice and kind of, hey, if I fail, can you vouch for me? Like, yeah, yeah. But I don't think there were as many, people, I would say. Actually, the person who did influence me the most, who was really supportive of me, was I was a history minor. So I was a
Okay.
U.S. history minor.
Mm-hmm.
So, oh my gosh, what's her name? What's it? Wendy. It'll come to me after we hang up, right? She was like, so I love U.S. history, and that was like another passion of mine. So like I would always like, and I knew I wanted to go into film because I was always like, hey, you should show Gangs of New York. Like I was like, it was always an argument. Like you should show this film. I was like, it's kind of accurate. She's like, it's not accurate. So we'd argue even in class. But she was awesome. She was very supportive of me. She wrote me recommendations. She just thought I could. She supported me. It was on my PT program, which was very interesting. It was my U.S. history teacher. This woman. She was at the time. She must have been in like her probably 50s or late 50s, and she was just incredibly supportive of me. And I wasn't even a U.S. major, U.S. history major. There was people there in U.S. history majors going to law school and going to poli-sci. But she was someone that just it's funny. I never thought of it. Before it was always like the story of like my advisor didn't believe in me, and I'm like, wait, there was someone. And I think there's we kind of overlook that sometimes. And I saw that. So you remember this? Oh yeah, I forgot. I'm like, when you kind of get places, you totally forget all like the good and the bad. It's a forgetting curve, the psychological curve, right? And that it's a real published article. That as time goes on from an event, you just really forget. And I'm not sure if it's a defense mechanism of the body.
I like what happened here. You may forget your professor's name, but you
Yeah,
don't forget how they made you feel.
yeah, right,
Right? I mean,
exactly.
we're just watching you do that in real time right now.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
that's a wake-up call for anybody in positions of authority or power over students, the brush off or the support. It may just be another day in the office, but it could be a distinct turning point in some students' lives. So that's very eye-opening for us to remember, for those of us in academia or in support institutions, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's actually like kind of emotional, like when we talk about it, because like she really was influential. Like for
Yeah, yeah, there you
it's crazy.
go.
Like I never like you're freaking bringing out the cobwebs in me. But no, she was. I'm gonna remember her name when we hang up. It's crazy. But yeah, it's funny. I totally forgot about it. Because I guess I was so focused on passing for PT that
Uh-huh.
she kind of went by the wayside. I was a U.S. history professor. I had her for like 3 or 4 semesters, and she just was. She was cool.
It was funny because I have this formatted question set up, and my next question should have been: were there any special challenges or barriers or facilitators in your pursuit? And yeah, I think you just answered it in the last 10
With
minutes, right?
tears, with
I know
tears.
it germinated very genuinely. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to something that's actually sort of related but still good. How have you really tangibly seen, because of the fire underneath your butt and the support of people you don't expect, how has the multimedia and the physical therapy you've seen it benefit your patients or the PD profession or the community you're in? Have you seen scenarios where it's actually worked for the better?
What be more specific? What do you mean?
Like, how,
What be more specific? What do you mean?
Like, where did you say take your multimedia skills that you learned from Brick, or from your interest in like sketches, where people have come to you and said, "Hey, man, your stuff really made XYZ better," or because of you, man, I was more exposed to the wonderful ideas of physical therapy. Because there's good fruit here, I'm sure.
Yeah,
But,
you know what's funny? I'm so like, I like this. I'm bad at getting compliments or bad at getting like a notification. But like, I put up one of my shorts, my 30-second shorts, is like comedic thing, and I swing dance. So I was pre-COVID. I was swing dancing.
okay.
2 or 3 times a week. It's a social, a lot of people. And my friends are like, "Oh my gosh, I loved your video. You got to keep making those." Like, I actually learned something about this body part. I was like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, oh." I was like, "Oh yeah, that. Oh, you saw it? Yeah." So like, it's that. And then like another time, when I was a host at Brick, they show on cable television and in Brooklyn and I think they actually still show it on reruns episodes. There's 15 episodes
Royalty checks.
on the aired. Yeah, right. Yeah, seriously, I should keep getting paid for that. But one time my friend comes in to cross over with her husband. She's like, "Oh, we saw you on, you were being played on TV," and I was like, "What?" I was like, "Oh, cool." Then at the diner, I show up at the diner, and this guy, the manager, older, I think he's part owner. He's like, "You." He's like, "You were on TV." Greek guy. "Hey, you were on TV." I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, you were doing fitness things." I was like, "Oh yeah." And I got like every time I walked in, he's like, "You TV guy," and they like serves me my food. But what's funny is just like that. With the U.S. history, I hope that it changes people, it helps people. But you really never know. Just like my professor, it's like, "Oh my gosh, it took me like 15 years to realize that she was a huge impact in my life."
You're gonna go after this interview.
So-
You're gonna Google her.
Yeah.
You're gonna Google her, and you're gonna shoot her an email and
It's like
tell her.
I can picture myself yelling at her, being like, "Professor, but this, but what about this?" But what, like arguing with her in the classroom, and that name comes out because it was she just had it was a great atmosphere in that classroom, and openness. We were just able to kind of speak our minds. It was great in a history class. You just argue, pretty much. You just debate things, and why did they choose to do this and that, but Anyway, so I hope it makes an impact on people, and even helping. Now I try to help other PTs create, what you're doing, being like, "Oh, the lighting here, camera here, do this, buy that, don't get this, try this, say that." They're like, because I've been there. I started really early. Now, my journey is not done though. I kind of go back and forth where my passion was to get on a major platform, NBC, CBS. I just felt like that platform for me is where I wanted to be. Not everybody is meant to do a podcast. Not everybody's meant to do a blog. I hate writing. I do. Like my brother back in the day, early days of Gmail, you need to start a blog. And I was like, "Oh, I know," and I did. He did it for me, and I saw the power of it, like connectedness. But I just hated writing. And guess what? Now I write, and I wrote a pilot. That's all I do is write scripts. So write sketches and scripts and stuff like that. But So, I kind of hope that, people are going to be helped. I think in the future, that's the goal, is that people help. But the goal is this. It's not that you get helped as one viewer, which you're right. This is a very powerful tool. I came from a neighborhood that was very broken, a lot of drugs, violence, single moms. Like I wasn't a single parent child, statistically speaking. I just happened to be one because my dad passed away. Most my friends, their dads were just deadbeat dads and they just weren't around, right? So I wanted to come back to like where the family sits down and watches my stuff, like all together, as opposed to individually on a mobile phone. This is my choice. You're right. I could have made a bigger impact if I had just kind of 6 years ago kept with the YouTube and kind of continued and blown up. But I don't know what it was. It was just like me. My desire was perfectly. It was in my brain. I'm like really close. I'm pretty much at the doorstep right now, with my distribution. But it was just the way that I saw it. I'm sure you own a practice, but do you want to have 10 practices across 4 different states? Probably not. But people will be like, "You should do it. You'll make so much money. You'll do this," right? So there's a lot of choices that we make in our lives that this is where my role is. This is my mission. This is
your
my
why.
calling.
This is your why.
This is my why. This is my what. as well. What do you want to do? I want to do this on a platform. So,
I mean, just the narrative of this interview, the thread, we started off I'm trying to get a measure of your background, and we uncover some things I wasn't planning on. And now you realize the ripples she caused in your life. And maybe now I'm having you basically forcing you to review the ripples you've caused with these viewers. And, hopefully somebody will listen to this one. Some young PT student is going to figure out who's a very good TikToker or, or whatever the next platform is going to be. And they're going to know to, hit up Adrian and say, hey, Adrian, I really love your story. What can I do to take this forward? And there's nothing wrong with that. We are ripples in the pond, but that may be a wave in the ocean thousands of miles away.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's kind of the goal, is to also, uplift our profession that wants to be, helpful, wants to do everything for everybody and be very helpful. There's people, but the cool thing is, like, now there's a lot more PTs getting into the media, like yourself, I've been doing this for 9 years,
Wow.
And so, I've got a lot of different experiences, but also my goals are different. Maybe your goals will change or other people's goals will change along the way, but, I had the vision, long time ago. I think the clear vision came about 5-6 years ago. The television, the half-hour TV episodic sketch comedy was about 5-6 years ago.
Just give us a little bit more detail actually about your latest project, Gross Anatomy, and tell us more about it.
Yeah, so I kind of came up with the name, again, 5-6 years ago. I've used it for everything else that I've done in the meantime. So like the Firework app, the 30-second sketches that I put up and on stories on Facebook, my YouTube channel that I started recently. But that's just, I thought it was gross because there are going to be some gross sketches in anatomy, because it's really, if you know anatomy, right? That's what we do. We know anatomy. We know where the muscles are and how they function. So that's kind of the play on words, gross anatomy. It's a chorus, but it's also gross as in yuck. Like maybe there'll be like slime dripping down or something like that, or something weird, like
you got to be engaging
flexing.
somehow.
Yeah, the G flexing in the motion graphic. Anyways, so the goal was to entertain. So it's edutainment, right? But when I talked to my manager when I first started developing the actual script, because this is like the actual script was developed over 3 months. The actual script that is done right now, the pilot script. And what I always wanted to put into it was a story. And if the last few have like three more videos coming out. It's called Ouch Stories in my Firework app. They'll come out soon. Is that I wanted to relate to people. Okay, so I wanted to put humans, an occupation, a type of lifestyle, and a background, right? And incorporate that with a physical injury that they might have, right? So it could be let's just a Filipino father of two. You have 2 kids, 3 kids, 2 kids, right? Yeah, 2 kids who owns a business, and he has bad back pain, and so his business is plumbing, and so he has to bend over, and he has to have his kids, help him all the time. Right, that's a real thing. That's actually a thing that happens. Like, I had to tie my mom's shoes as a kid all the time. So I was like from like 10 years old till I was like 20. And so I took the story of humans and I interlaced it with typical injuries that we see, and then how do you fix it? And if I can get your attention, I can teach you.
Right.
And that's the engagement part and the immersive part that everybody's talking about.
The physical therapy concept of salience. It has to have meaning, right? Trying to make content that is meaningful to the audience.
Right, exactly. And it's a book called Made to Stick by the Heath brothers, where it talks about if you can attack someone's heart, you have to get to the heart and the soul of somebody, and then they'll pay attention. They'll pay attention. So am I going to put Superman, myself as Superman in the sketch, and that's the first pilot episode. How am I going to put Spider-Man in one? How am I going to put Luis Miguel, a Spanish, famous singer? How am I going to put Celia Cruz in one? So all these different aspects of people who I've met and my own background into it. And what I did was you have to create, it's a formula, but what you do, every episode is the same structure, the same for almost like when you do an eval prior. At this point in your career, you kind of know what you're going to start with in the first 4 things that you're going to test the patient with. If it's lower extremity, if it's upper extremity, it's the same thing in film. Same thing in
each patient is individual, but the human body hasn't changed more or less for the last 50,000 years. So things
Correct.
break
Yeah.
down the same way,
Yep.
especially same culture, same areas. But
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. I can see the episodes are like that. The narrative has to have a certain skeleton. It's just what's on is going to be different every time.
Exactly, exactly. So the skeleton is kind of the same, and you can you pull things out and replace them. And so what we chose, me, my manager, and my script developer, was to have it's a classroom, pretty much. It's a classroom. So I pretty much go in as myself, somewhat myself, but more like kind of naive and kind of
You're
green.
like the Rock. You're like the U to 11.
Yeah. Well, it's me to like -5,
Oh, as
right?
you dial down.
Right?
Okay,
Me
right.
dialed down to like me times 20. And so so what happens is like I'm trying to teach, and I'm sure, most of us have had tough students, but it was like, so I go into a classroom and I teach about the human body. It's like a health class or something like that. But the students are just ruthless. Like they're just rowdy, they're ruthless, they're just brutal. And I just suck. Like I'm just like trying to stay above water barely. And then but I'm trying so hard that I'm using these stories that don't make sense. Like I'm using a Superman story that Superman sprains his ankle.
Right,
And
right, right.
the kids, these wisecracking kids, they're probably kind of like your kids' age, and they're like, "Yeah, that's not true. What are you talking about?" Like they're smart though; they're not dumb. And having hopefully minority actors in these roles as well. A whole diverse cast. That is the goal. So these are smart kids. They're not dumb. They're not jerks, but they're intelligent, and that's kind of the crux of it. So as I'm teaching, I'm using these sketches, and it kind of goes from the classroom, like a typical classroom that you might see in a sitcom, to like these crazy film like Marvel Cinematic Universe, like epic scenes, and with anatomical VFX.
Oh,
And kind of right now with everything that's happening with with COVID, but also in the production industry, things like The Mandalorian, the costs are going down and the production is going up. It's insane what's happening because they're using virtual sets. So there's a lot of flexibility with what we can do at this point. So, but every episode is different. Like there'll be a Bruce Lee one. So we have the season 1 done, and I just have to kind of forget off the top of my head. But there's a Bruce Lee one. Bruce Lee's Bad Knee is the name of the episode. But every time I go in, it's actually a different group of students. I kind of teach like college students, a senior center, union workers, and every time I just get like beat up by the students. But at the end of the season, I kind of grow as a person, and so that's kind of the crux of it is that I'm going in to teach, but I'm a really bad teacher, and I'm trying way too hard for my students in the scene. But the viewer in the audience is like, oh wow, that's actually really, like they're learning.
the growth arc of the growth of your character and your story arc should be a great
Yeah,
payoff. And I'm going
yeah.
to ask you to cut it off there because I don't want you to spoil the show.
That's fine. It's not gonna be spoiled. It's fine.
Is it ready? Is it ready for release? Is it something that our audience can access right now?
No, no. So right now, so what happens is you write the story. You have to. It's a whole bunch of documents, and then you go to producers and studios, and they pitch it. So my manager's right now currently pitching it to be purchased, and then we go into production.
Oh.
So I'm kind of just in a holding pattern of, let's see who. But it's also again the creative differences of what. Obviously I'll jump at the first chance, but sometimes you can kind of give up a lot of things with. Just like in PT, you get a great job offer, but you're working in a really crappy situation where you're seeing 5 patients an hour, or you're getting paid less, but you have an incredible situation, so great mentoring. Right. So it's one of those things, but my managers are really experienced. They've been in the Hollywood business for a while now, and I trust them. And it's just a matter of who's gonna fork over money. But it's original. It's an original content, and it's kind of what's happening. They want uplifting stories that are educational and people of color. So it's just kind of a wait and see, and we'll go from there.
Just in
So it's all
case,
done. Everything is
Adrian,
done. Yeah.
Yeah. Just in case there's like a young version of you who's thinking about PT school, who's also just psyched with making and crafting movies and film and images. How could they benefit from your story? What would you tell them so that their way would be a little easier to be able to marry the two?
I mean, it's already naturally easier
Mhm.
already. Just even like when I started iPhones, were pretty crappy. Now they're beautiful. I've shot some stuff for clients on my iPhone, and it just looks
Nice.
like wonderful.
Mhm.
Easier, I would say, Let me think. YouTube, everything's free. LinkedIn has amazing courses, incredible courses.
Any particular brands or channels that they should watch out for?
Yeah. So there are for YouTube channels to learn. Filmright is just incredible, and that's actually like what influenced me as well was the way that Filmright taught. And Bill Nye the Science Guy was my original, influence. But Filmright did exactly what I'm trying to do on a different scale, and so they put sketches in to teach you how to do VFX and editing and things like that. But again, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn VFX to put cool models, animate things, and put it in there. Some of them might just want to talk to the camera and show exercises. You don't have to learn all that stuff.
Right.
So yeah, Filmright's a good one. That's for a little bit more like intermediate to advanced. There's Justin O'D show has a nice beginner level stuff. Sonduck, Sonduck Films is another one that there's a little bit more like graphics for that one, but he also does some film stuff. And then Adobe has some tutorials as well. And I'm trying to think of what else. I actually have a whole PDF I created for a group I help with, and PPS that has a bunch of links, like 6 or 7 links that I recommend for learning video. But the other part about filmmaking is the part that I had the biggest trouble with for years. I think only in the past year and a half have I kind of figured it out, is the story. That every film has a theme. Every story is about something. So there's also how to engage somebody, how to kind of connect with your viewer, and how to kind of create that arc is just as important, or the theme. Vocabulary. One of the things that I for the first 6 years, my roommate and friend, he was like, Adrian, I can't really quite understand it. And he's like, you're talking up here, we're down here. And it was hard to kind of bring my vocabulary down. But in the clinic with a patient, you can do it. When the camera's on, you're this expert, you want to talk about meniscal cartilage, synovial fluid, and you can't do that. So there's this weird kind of gap that happens just, naturally.
You got to meet the audience where they are.
Yeah, but we think that we do, but we're really not at times when the camera's on, which is something that I struggled with for a long time.
7 years of doctoring school. That's really hard just to put down.
Yeah. And even in the clinic, the way you talk to your patient in front of your patient is different than you're going to talk on camera. It shouldn't be, though. And we do that. And that's where my roommate would be like, I just don't quite get what you're saying. And I'm like, oh, you're right. So, so that's what I would say. There's so many layers. It's about, what's a powerful story in the video? How do you formulate your video? How do you make it compelling? How do you create a story if you want to create a story? And education as well, same thing. Education as well.
Adrian, if we had these potential filmmakers / physical therapists, how would they be able to or reach out to you and the things you want to probably share with them? Is there a way to reach out to you?
Yeah, you can have my number, 585-472-5201. I'm serious. I'm dead serious.
I'm going to flash that number right there. Right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is there a social media handle you want to share with them? Or are you on social media?
Yeah. You just find me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. My name, Adrian Miranda.
We're flashing those contacts right now on the bottom, right? So that's a great way to reach out to Adrian.
Yeah, just to me personally, it's fine. Cell phone, email, amiranda84@gmail.com. Social media is fine. I only have Facebook, LinkedIn. I don't check my Twitter anymore. I am on the Firework app. And then, that's it. Yeah.
Great. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening in to us. It was a very interesting story listening to Adrian's journey from multimedia to movement and everything in between. And we hope that we all learned something today, and we appreciate your time, Dr. Miranda.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me. And hopefully, people got something out of this crazy, not confused, interesting potpourri of a person.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening today to the Life in Motion podcast. Striving for excellence doesn't demand perfection. Just be a little better in all that we do than yesterday. This is Ben Aguila. Till our next episode. God bless.